All right, so as we start to get everything off of the 2 liter that we need to go for the 2.5 over there somewhere, this is actually something I made for one of my other Miatas. This should bolt up with the header, or exhaust manifold as you'd call it. So I'm going to measure how much room I have, and we will make me a new exhaust manifold using this. Although I'm going to double check and make sure that still bolts up to this, because it's been tossed around the shop a couple times. But I have a new flange and whatnot, and I have piping and everything, so we're going to be making the header, but I got to get all of this stuff. Like, this is not on the new engine. This is my EGR. It's not a front wheel drive EGR. This is also my water tube. It's same thing. Intake manifold, this little tube, the valve cover even goes with it, because their coil packs bolt in a different spot. Flywheel and everything still goes over there. Starter goes over on the other one. And then we got to move all belts and accessories. So I've got mostly all of it undressed. We still have to take the crank pulley and put it on the new engine. The valve cover, the coil packs, these little sensors. This one, where is it? That little sensor, the VVT sensor. We're actually using the VVT from the new engine, but I'm changing this seal in this valve cover to equate for the other one because they're actually a different height, so this seal won't work. And then we have to, well, I have a new remain seal, so that'll be replaced. And we're gonna have to take the oil pan off of this and put it on the new one, and then we're gonna be getting rid of the balance shaft on the new one. And we have a balance shaft delete kit that we're gonna put in there. It just fills the hole so that we don't have to worry about any oil coming out where it shouldn't. Other than those, I have a new breather, crankcase breather. It's actually an aftermarket one, so it's a little nicer of a piece. I don't have to worry about the plastic stuff. I have a new thermostat, new water pump. So leaving those on this engine. I'm actually gonna be selling this engine to one of our patrons because he has a Miata that he needs an engine for and he wants to keep it a 2 liter. And then we'll be able to clean up some parts and finally start on the new engine. So this is my jig for the header. I have my new flange. For the head, we're gonna cut this one off and reuse the OEM flange for the rest of the exhaust and get rid of the cat. This is my header design. I think this one looks better than the first one that I made for my other NC Miata. But now all I gotta do is take over there those and chop them up into pieces that work with this. Quick update on the header. I'm in a spot where this is starting to get really difficult. The pipes are really close together and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get in there with enough gas coverage to make it all nice. And I ordered some bendable tungsten because I think it's going to help. That'll be here tomorrow. But yeah, I just wanted to show you kind of what I'm dealing with. Getting in there. So you can see I still have, where is it? I still have that little bit to do. And the torch, granted I have smaller cups and whatnot, but I think this is going to be kind of where I'm going to be doing, and I have to have the tungsten really far out because that's as far as it can go, and you can see it doesn't reach the end where the other weld is going to be. And if you don't know, welding with TIG, you want the torch to be as close as you can get without touching the metal. So it being, what is that, like maybe a 1/4 inch away is entirely way too far for that to be effective. So I have to extend, this is even more than I want it to be extended for the tungsten, but I have to extend it even further to be able to get into there. And even with the bendable tungsten, it'll still have to be really far out. I might have to get a diffuser for the end of my other hose. This is how I've been back purging. And tin foil is because I don't have the little special cups that hold it in there. But if I get a diffuser for the end of this, I can kind of stick it in there and it'll just kind of like fill that area with argon gas, which will help. So doing this last pipe is going to be a nightmare. After I get this one all the way welded, I'm going to put this back on the flange and then start doing the outside of the fourth, or it would be cylinder 1 actually. I'm going to start doing the outside of it, and then I'll have to see what I have to do for the inside here. So it's not done yet. I still got to do the flange down here, and I still got to do some welds around some stuff. But I figured better time to check if it fits. There is clearance. You can see it. There's a gap there. I'm going to do some heat protectant tape and whatnot around this because it is plastic and whatnot, and we'll just see if it melts or not. Essentially, if I do make more headers or decide to make actual headers for these cars, I will have this a little bit more aggressive this way, and also these will be shorter because for my car the OEM mount won't fit. So I'm going to make a mount because this section right here is actually in the way. The third runner hits it. Where is it? There you go, you can see that. So I could grind away, but being that this is just honeycomb aluminum, I'd rather just make one out of steel. That way I know my engine is properly supported. My new bracket welded up in the jig, so I'm gonna unbolt it, bolt it on there, and we're gonna see the gaps that I have to fill, because this isn't going to be strong enough to hold an engine. We're gonna have to make, like, triangulate it in here. That way we know for sure that this isn't gonna bend under any circumstances while I'm driving around or feeding on the car. So this is my favorite part. I call it CAD, or cardboard assisted design. So I'm gonna draw my lines here, and I'm probably not going to go all the way out to the bolt holes. That way I can at least get something around it and I don't get, you know, in a point to where the socket or the wrench won't fit. Let me draw this. I'm gonna cut out some stuff and we'll do some fine tuning, and then I'll tape it on, and I'll do a little one on this side because I have an idea of where it needs to go. And then that should be everything I need for this mount. Cardboard is all made. I like how it fits. Motor mount is tacked together. I wanted to get it in here before I actually welded it completely, just to make sure I was happy with the fitment. But I actually have no complaints over how this mount fits. So now I'm gonna weld it all together, clean it up a little bit, probably paint it because it is just raw steel. And then I gotta find the right bolts, that way I don't have a castle nut as a washer. Here we've got the new engine. It doesn't look new right now, but we've got the new engine. So I'm going to dismantle all of it, and then once we get the timing stuff to move everything over, I'll finish that out. So we popped the valve cover off on this thing, and Jesus Christ, this shit was well taken care of. Whoever the f took care of it. I mean, granted, mine with 209 on it, I've seen worse. But this is about as clean as a clean used engine you could get. So later today, I'll be getting the tool for these. So essentially, sorry for the light. When these are at top dead center, there's little notches in them. You can see that notch. And you slide a plate into both cams and it keeps them from spinning. Because I have to take this crank pulley off and take the one off of the 2-liter engine and move it over here. So once you, on these engines, once you undo the crank pulley, the bolt, the timing can literally just jump. It'll spin because the crank pulley bolt being tight is what keeps this in time. So there's a little hole here, and there's a couple, like you take this piece out, there's a pin that goes in there and locks against the crankshaft. You put a pin in, a bolt in there, and it, where is it? You see that little threaded hole back there? It goes through that and it threads into the hole behind it, and that holds the crank pulley where it needs to be. And then when you put it all back together, you do the same thing, tighten it, and you're golden. So I have this mostly done. I'm gonna take off this pulley because we don't use this one. Our pulley goes where this bolt is, and then I'll get to putting the new water pump on. And I'm gonna take these out because this is for a front wheel drive engine mount, but I don't need that anymore. We are now at the point where I am going to take the crank pulley off of this and put it on there, and take that crank pulley and put it on here. The only reason I'm putting that one on here is so that this doesn't spin. We're doing it because this is a single rib, or not a single rib, this is a single belt, where this one has 2 belts. You can see it on there. That and the reluctor wheel for the crank, or the crank position sensor, is different on these, so it won't run with that crank pulley. These are the tools. So this is what I was talking about. This is the little pin that comes out. This is a tool that goes in there. So it's a smaller version of this. And as this is in there, you actually, while you're turning the crank, this pin, the end will stop the crank at top dead center. And then you come over here and there's slots in the back of the cams. And this is a machined piece of metal. It's aluminum, I believe, because it's really light. But that just slides in there, that holds the cams. So I'm going to also have to use these wrenches because I only have one of these tool sets. And once you take these out and the crank pulley is off of the engine, the cams will spin. And then we don't have timing anymore. It has to be reset, and I don't want to do that. So you'll see what I'm doing. I'm just going to time lapse it. Next thing I got to do is swap out the oil pan and oil pickup tube. While I do that, I'm going to take off the flywheel, and the rear main seal will replace that, and then we're going to just, gasket everything up. I'm going to be taking off this balance shaft. We have a balance shaft delete kit, and that's going to plug the hole that oil would come out into the balance shaft. The hole. We have the pickup tube, which is going to change to this pickup tube. because the oil pan's different. We're gonna be using the oil pan from the 2 liter. I pulled that off, I cleaned it up. That way it matched closer to how this engine looks, more just raw aluminum. Now that the engine has a mount and a header on it, I'm going to start putting everything back together, transmission and whatnot. That way we can wheel the car over, bolt this to the subframe, slide the engine back up into it, start putting it back together. Everything on the engine is where it needs to be right now. Other than I'm going to get the wire harness and we're going to plug all that in before putting this onto the subframe. But right now, got to put the master and the clutch in, and then my brake lines, we got to put those back in before we try to slide anything else. The subframe is out of the car. We'll bring the cherry picker over here. We're gonna get the engine over, sitting on it. I'm gonna put the mount bolts on, and then we're gonna do the engine harness before we lower the car back down onto it. Last thing I'm gonna do before the engine goes in is install some heat blankets, because the trans heat guard, whatever it was, fell apart when we took it apart. So I got this stuff, it's got adhesive on the back of it, and I'm just going to clean up under here with some wax and grease. That way it'll hopefully stick. I might trim it to be the exact spots where I need it for certain spots on there. Other than that, I'm going to put these 4 sheets in there. Maybe it won't take 4, we'll see. Just because I'm going to try to keep my feet not toasty. So I wanted to stop right there because I hadn't used this stuff before, and it's amazing. It literally just pushed on. I was able to form it in this area. It's stuck decently smooth, and like it's on there. I don't know how better to describe it. It worked really well. It sticks really well. It forms to whatever you're putting it on. Now that I have everything plugged in, except for the O2 sensors, header's tight, everything else is tight, the transmission's even plugged in. I got the starter on this side, that's what I was doing. So starter along with the red RTV that someone put on there. Ground over here, oil pressure sensor, AC compressor, NOx sensors all plugged in. This is all extra stuff that gets plugged in or plugged onto the car and into the firewall and all that other stuff. But as you saw when we took this out, it is actually much easier to have the engine completely plugged in right now, lower the car, and then drape the harness over the rest of the car. subframe is in, and it's close, but we have clearance. The header is good. So I'm going to get some more of this gold tape, and we're gonna clean up back here, and I also have the OEM heat shield that I'm gonna do here too. That way I can keep as much heat away from the heater hoses and the AC lines, as well as some tape underneath down there into the frame rail to help with heat into the cabin. Granted, I mean, the frame rail does come far away from the firewall, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So also, I like the paint. So the more I can keep the paint from having any kind of heat issues or flaking, because it's really close, the better. Since we have another week of work ahead of us, I'm probably going to come in next weekend for us and try to get a little bit more done. We still have to do the crash bar and the little fender flare, or the fender holders that come out the side here. But it's really those, and then the jams for the doors and the trunk. And then we get to start prepping the exterior of the car. So taking a little longer than I thought, but a lot of stuff has gone in the last month, and we had a good busy month at the shop, which is always fun. I'm hoping to have this done probably the end of June.